I want to share with you one last vision that we have, and this is something you'll read about in the Kansas City Star this week, so that's why I want you to hear about it first here. So in Kansas City, we have a seminary. St. Paul School of Theology is our United Methodist Seminary here. And St. Paul, like many of our seminaries in the United States, has struggled. And it's struggled because we have less students going into seminary. We have an aging population of pastors, less students going to seminary. We have less denominational resources being poured into the seminaries. And so the population has shrunk by about half. In the process of doing that, the number of square feet that you need for the students has decreased. St. Paul Seminary at Truman and Van Brunt has 217,000 square feet of space, and they need about 30,000 square feet of space. So right now, they're spending almost $1 million a year on maintaining facilities that they don't need. Facilities, security, utilities, building maintenance and upkeep. The reality is, in about 3 or 4 years, I don't think this seminary will still be here. So I'm on the board of the seminary, and of course, I'm your pastor, and so we began having conversations about, well, you know, what might be a future for the seminary. And part of what we realized is we have 24 classrooms on this campus that are used every night of the week, but during the daytime, they sit empty. And we asked the question, what would happen? We're paying for air conditioning and heating and maintenance on those buildings already. What would happen if the seminary moved to Church of the Resurrection's Leawood campus? And then we began to dream, what would happen if we reinvented how you do theological education? What would happen if we could work together, the church and the seminary, to attract and recruit great students, if we could mentor those students? And the model that we had was KU Med Center. At KU Med Center, you have doctors in training, and they're learning in the classroom from great teachers and instructors, and then they go into the hospital room, and they're learning how to be a doctor in the hospital room. What would happen if students who came to St. Paul were learning not only from excellent professors, but also learning from practitioners how to do children's ministry, how to do youth ministry, how to do sermon planning, how to do worship planning, how to prepare a budget, how to do HR and IT, and how to do all of the other things that we do around this congregation. I remember when I graduated from seminary, I didn't have a single class on how to do a wedding. My first wedding, I was terrified. I called another pastor. I said, how do you do this? Nobody ever told me. I don't even know what to do. Funerals, my first funeral, I was terrified. It was like I'd never even watched one happen. What happens if all the students at St. Paul at Resurrection actually come and watch us do funerals? They learn from us how do we do that and why we do it. Weddings, budgeting, all of these things that we never learned in seminary. And we began to think that we might actually prepare better leaders for the church to help the church have a future if the church and the seminary work together. And so in 2 weeks, St. Paul School of Theology will be voting on whether to move and relocate to Church of the Resurrection. Here's what will happen for you. If they do, we'll have a theological library on site for you to go use with the latest commentaries and theological journals. You'll have a chance to take classes from professors at night that will be oriented towards our lay people, but excellent professors who are teaching you on the Bible, theology, history, and all of these other things. And you'll have a chance to shape and mentor 1,000 pastors over the next 20 years who will graduate from the seminary and go out and touch 5 churches each. We're pretty excited about this idea and the possibilities of it. So all of that leads us to ask the question, well, what are we going to do when it comes to our buildings, and how do we make all this happen? And in January, we had a building committee put together. You all voted and approved them, and they began the work of doing 2 things, trying to figure out what really do we need when it comes to buildings in the future here at Resurrection, and to choosing an architect. Now, we haven't chosen the architect yet. We've narrowed it down to 3, and we'll make that choice by November. And all of this is looking towards 2 years of planning and then 2 years of construction, and in 2017, we would move into whatever we're looking at moving into. But I want to at least show you the ideas that we have. Don't get too hung up on the details because we haven't even started working with an architect yet. These are just the ideas, but I want you to see them. And so let me just show you. This is, for those of you in Vibe, you'll recognize this space really well. This is where you're meeting for worship right now, our student center. Here's the Wesley Covenant Chapel. And what we're suggesting is that in the future, well, starting next fall, these classrooms would be used for the seminary during the daytime. At night, they would still be used for all of our programs and ministries. Currently, this is congregational care offices. We're suggesting first that we finish the east building the way we had originally planned it, and we add a wing right over here. We move our congregational care offices over here, and you know that the rest of our staff office a mile away, and we spend $200,000 a year on rent to hold offices. We're going to move those staff back on site, so all of our staff are here at this location. That frees up these, when this is constructed, it frees up these spaces for staff and faculty of the seminary. And these classrooms, which are currently used for adult Sunday school and other programs, we would still be able to use at night, but this is where the courses would be held during the day for the seminary. The theological library would eventually be built in this location. And you say, well, what would happen then to these classes when we need them, if the seminary is using them? We're going to look at where we would move adult Sunday school in just a moment. So this is what that wing was meant to look like when it was added and what the east building will look like when it's completed.